Why couldn't they see me as you saw me?
On your feet.
You knew my heart even before I did.
Big Brother, proud sponsor of Starfleet Academy. Welcome to the Endless Frontiers, your home for all things science fiction and science fiction. I'm your host, Jed Morgan, and Starfleet Academy Episode 4 is out, so let's talk about it. I apologize to anyone who's distracted by the quality of my voice. I am sick as a dog right now, and only part of that is due to the quality of this episode. Starfleet Academy Episode 4 is exactly what we've come to expect from this show. If you identify with the Gen Z humor and with the characters portrayed, this is a warm blanket of a show edifying your self-identity. To everybody else, it is the same poorly written, emotional drivel that has no intellectual value whatsoever. It isn't meant to challenge you intellectually. It isn't meant to be a compelling story to get you emotionally invested. It is really meant to be a warm hug for the people who identify with the characters and the political messages of the show. If that isn't you, it's providing nothing of quality because it misunderstands the target audience of Star Trek and television in general, because this audience that they're seeking doesn't truly exist. The majority of Gen Z, which this show is absolutely targeted towards, is not what Hollywood executives think it is, and you can see that utter rejection of this show with the viewership data that we're getting. It falls out of the top 10 as soon as the episode comes out on Paramount. It really doesn't move the needle in the wider world. It's been utterly forgotten, and it deserves that in every instance of it occurring, because it offers nothing. This episode is more of that. It is political. It wants you to see the metaphor of gayness in a conservative society. It is not subtle in that message whatsoever, because episode 4 follows Jaden, the pacifist Klingon, as he has to come to terms with his heritage and his self-identity, even though those confront against each other, and he must find a way to live in both worlds of Starfleet gayness and Klingon traditionalism. Yes, you heard me correctly. That is this episode, framed by a debate between students. Debates in Star Trek have been a central feature for decades at this point. There have been some incredible debates across the franchise, including my favorite episode of Star Trek, Measure of a Man, from Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2, where it's hotly debated whether or not Data can be considered alive or as a sentient life form. It centers all around that debate, with Riker and Picard taking opposite sides to serve a common goal. There are other examples of this, like Picard coming in between the Duras and Galron right of succession to rule the Klingon Empire. There are many examples of it done so very well, but this episode from Starfleet Academy will not be remembered among them, because the debates that we are shown are all emotionally driven or dry facts driven. There's no logical arguments being made, with the exception of in the montage of debates, you see Fishboy actually make a cogent, logical argument about the best thing that Starfleet can do in this moment of crisis post-burn is to fix itself before it tries to fix anybody else. That is a cogent argument that is actually sound in logic. Everything else is, I feel this way, or this Starfleet regulation says it is this other way. Those are the only options with this debate. They're not forming arguments. This is really the level that we've come to. The letter of the law or the letter of my emotions. Neither of which will change people's minds. Because more important than the debates shown between the students, that is exactly what the show is doing. The show is trying to make you think that the Klingon way is wrong. Even though you have to learn to live with it at the end of the episode, it is still wrong, and it fashions that into a baseball bat to beat you over the head with it, similar to how they do the gay messaging, with Jaden's pacifism being a metaphor for homosexuality. That is the entire episode. There's not much more worth talking about beyond what I already have, but let's dive into some more of the spoiler specifics after this word from our sponsor, Plotter. This video is sponsored by Plotter. Every writer knows the drill. Staring at a blank page, characters ghosting you mid-plot, timelines unraveling like a bad sweater. Then I found Plotter, my plotting lifeline. Visual timelines that snap into place, drag and drop scenes to tame the wildest arcs, character sheets to keep everyone on track. I've used Plotter to create a series bible, multi-track storylines, and lore documents that make world building a breeze. Use my link or scan the QR code today to get Plotter for life with a single payment of $150. Let Plotter help you conquer your stories. Link in the description. The episode follows Jaden, the Klingon Starfleet Academy cadet most closely. He initially finds out that his family, who are Klingon refugees, pretty much all Klingons are refugees at this point, are in a dangerous situation and may not have survived the encounter that they're in. And the entire academy comes to his aid and is like, oh my god, would you need anything? Can I help you? Tell us whatever you need. This forces everyone to face the debate of whether or not Klingons should be forced to accept humanitarian aid, because after the burn, the Klingon Empire and the Federation split ways. They're no longer allies. The Klingons are all refugees living planet to planet, just trying to eke out their survival. In some flashbacks with Jaden's family, we find that they really are scavenging off the land. They really have nothing to live for except for survival itself. And the Federation is considering forcing aid upon them because they found a world that is very similar to the Klingon homeworld, and they want to forcibly migrate the Klingons to it. We're already starting out at a very bad position from the Federation's perspective. As you might be able to tell, that clearly wrong perspective is the hurdle that the Starfleet cadets must get over in their moral journey to come to Jaden's perspective. Obviously, you shouldn't force someone to accept humanitarian aid, and that's as complex as the debates get. The old adage of a story is only as intelligent as its writers, and these writers continually prove that they cannot form complicated scenarios. They create a straw man of something that's utterly and obviously wrong and pretend that it's some big intelligent moment when the characters realize that that obviously wrong thing is wrong. It's quite sad to see, and it's really boring to watch all these characters slowly come to that conclusion, with random moments of strife between the cadets dragging out the runtime. Jaden fighting with Caleb because, oh, you're not my brother. Well, I never said I was your brother. Oh, I hate you. And then at the end, you really are my brother. Oh, I love you. Yeah, that's what's dragging out the runtime, preventing these characters from seeing what was obviously wrong with the Federation's perspective in this Klingon versus Federation diplomacy. Briefly before all of that, we're reintroduced to the Doctor, who's forming a debate between students to help their oral skills. And of course, it starts with the Doctor saying something is chicken shit, and then lecturing the students about how I'm mature enough to swear, and someday you'll be mature enough too. Straight up lecturing his audience about why it's okay that he be unprofessional. It really feels like a message from the writers to the audience, because a big complaint of Kurtzman Trek over the years is how mature the storytelling is, especially with its profanity. There wasn't a whole lot of profanity in classic Star Trek, with the exception of occasional dams, bastards, and stuff like that. Really mild language. And then, of course, in Voyage Home, when they went back to the 1980s, where culturally it made more sense to swear. Besides that, swearing has been incredibly mild throughout the franchise. As soon as Kurtzman took over, there are F-bombs, there's bitches, there's everything modern vernacular swearing consists of. So this message from the Doctor to his audience about how he's actually mature enough to say stuff like chicken shit is a blatant response to the audience of the show who isn't a fan of the swearing. After this pointless lecture about why chicken shit is actually a mature thing to say, the Doctor has the students line up and quickly debate each other with prompts given by the computer. Caleb, for some reason, is an exceptional debater. Turns out in prison, debating's just another form of fighting. So I learned how to debate better than everybody else, because in prison, memorizing regulation is a very important skill set. Yeah, that's not a good justification for why he's a very good debater. And he's not. He really isn't. He just memorizes cold, hard facts, and the Doctor accepts that as a debate, as an argument. That's the thing. These writers aren't intelligent enough to write a debate in the context of the plot, and they definitely aren't intelligent enough to write actual debate dialogue. The two options for debate dialogue is, I feel this way, or this regulation says that. Facts are absolutely important in a debate, but you need to connect facts, make an argument, have a stand, support your position. You can't just quote a million things. But that's, of course, all that they're capable of at all. And during the sequence, we find out that Jaden, poor little pacifist Klingon boy who's scared of everything, has a phobia of public speaking, and he sweats profusely, and it's really sad. And he even has a panic attack to the point where he doesn't remember the debate occurring. I think he passed out. They cut away from it, but the way that Caleb and him were hiding in the next scene made me think that something really embarrassing happened, like a Klingon passing out for standing at a podium and saying nothing. It's really embarrassing, the degradation of Klingon society in this show. They have no understanding of what makes it strong. Classic Star Trek showed Klingons in very interesting ways. The original series, Kirk didn't really know the Klingons that well, so they were this immutable villain force that he had to come up against, and, they were purely antagonistic. Then the movies made them a little bit more complicated, especially with the later ones and Undiscovered Country, some really heavy stuff as Kirk grappled with his desire for revenge, some great stuff. And then, of course, in TNG, as Picard is becoming entwined with their political society and Worf is rediscovering his heritage, we find ourselves confronted with a strong people who have been bred in war. But you don't have to hate them for that. TNG had a great way of showing the individual characters had their opinions on Klingon society, some looking down upon it, some not really caring, and then Worf just trying to embrace it as much as he could within the confines of Starfleet regulation. Then, those writers of TNG let the audience decide whether or not what the Klingons were doing were right. We never had Picard come out and say, if only the Klingons would stop being Klingons, they could be like us who are great. That's what this episode felt like, though, in Starfleet Academy. They really wanted you to know that Klingon tradition was what was killing them and that it was wrong. And Jaden was the example of what a Klingon should be. Throughout the flashbacks, as we get to understand Jaden's relationship with his family as their refugees, you realize that he's an outcast. They really treat him poorly for being a pacifist, for wanting to be a medic. And during this sequence, there's a series of very uncomfortable flashbacks filmed like a romantic sequence. It's exactly how you would film a lost lover flashback sequence, but it's between Jaden and his warrior brother who actually understands why he's the way he is. They don't understand your nature, little brother. I understand who you are deep inside. It's uncomfortable to watch, and more importantly, it's blatantly a metaphor for homosexuality in a society that doesn't accept it. And only by accepting the way that Jaden is and that society forward. And then later on, Starfleet can only help that society by becoming a little bit more like Jaden. And the metaphors for homosexuality only get deeper when, after the news of the Klingon issue comes up, when Jaden finds out that his family's in crisis and the official debate is scheduled, he pushes for the debate topic to be whether or not the Klingon should be forced to accept humanitarian aid and move to a world that's very much like the Klingon homeworld. Jaden starts pushing everybody away because he doesn't need any help. He needs to figure this out for himself and everything like that. Pushes Caleb away for no reason whatsoever. And while he's panicking in his room, trying to come up with this argument for why the Federation shouldn't force humanitarian aid upon the Klingons, Fishboy comes in and delivers one of the gayest non-gay scenes I've ever seen in a show whatsoever. They straight up hold each other and stroke each other and breathe into each other's mouths and chant mantras, and it's supposed to be a calming exercise that Fishboy knows from his homeworld, but it comes across as homoerotic. It's weird. All right, it is absolutely weird to watch. The fish boy's absolutely got his hand up Jaden's back. They're stroking each other. It's so uncomfortable to watch because only by accepting the homoeroticism can you be your true self. And of course, at the end of the episode, that battle breathing is what they called that weird exchange between Fishboy and Jaden, is what saves Jaden and propels him to actually debate Caleb in the debate climax. They're really not subtle with their messaging here. Throughout this debate, and actually multiple times throughout the episode, including the blurb of the episode's description, they label this crisis the Klingons are facing as an existential crisis. Genesis and Jaden both say it in the debate, and it seems like the writers think it's profound calling it an existential crisis. But they clearly have no understanding what an existential crisis is. It isn't a matter of we're starving, we're homeless, what are we going to do? Oh, our former allies are offering charity, our culture won't let us accept charity. That's not an existential crisis. The Klingons aren't being faced with the matter of what is the meaning of life and freedom and grand concepts like that about self-meaning. Jaden might be facing an existential crisis, but the Klingons aren't, and they continually label this crisis that will eventually lead to the extinction of the Klingons as an existential crisis. These writers continually highlight their lack of a grasp on the English language by stuff like this. They don't understand the dictionary definitions of things. They don't understand how words and stories flow. They really struggle with the English language as a whole. While these debate scenes are happening and Jaden's facing his own identity and how it conflicts with Starfleet Academy and the Klingons, Chancellor Aki is trying to find a way to force the Klingons into accepting this alternate homeworld so the Klingons can gather on and rebuild their society. She's not able to do it. She meets with an ex-lover who's the de facto leader of the Klingon survivors. He's rejecting everything because he understands that Klingon society is incompatible with charity. So that's not going anywhere. And it all leads up to the emotional climax when the Jem'Hadar gym teacher, who's also half Klingon, comes to Jaden and is like, I know what you feel. I know warrior is as warrior does, and battle is the language that people speak to each other. All nonsensical drivel that makes Jaden realize the solution to this existential crisis is to perform a dance of a sort. So he goes, tells everyone his plan. The Athena, which is already not in San Francisco, out in the galaxy, putting these first-year cadets in massive mortal peril, detaches its saucer section, which goes off to confront the Klingons near the homeworld. In the system where this new potential homeworld is, which is owned by the Federation, there are already Klingon refugees living there. So when they arrive, they call in that ex-lover of Aki, and they go, hey, there are Klingons in this system in breach of our territory. We're going to consider them all hostiles. This is Jaden's plan. His acknowledgement of his own identity and how it connects to his family and everything like that the gym teacher helped him realize is to say, hey, Klingon society is what it is. They should be able to self-identify as whatever they want. Let's give them pity instead of charity. His plan is to make a fake battle between Starfleet forces and Klingon forces so that the Klingons can claim that solar system as their new territory and inhabit the world as the spoils of war. Klingon pride is such that they won't accept charity, but they're okay with having a piteous battle with some Starfleet forces. They engage, they shoot a couple shots at each other, they're all clearly trying to miss, and then Starfleet, after like 10 seconds, is like, alright, pull out, we surrender. Hey, Klingons, you whipped our butt so good. You're so strong, you're so big, you'll have this territory. Thank you for sparing us. And the Klingons colonize this world. It's blatantly a performative act. It's blatantly a fake battle. The Klingons, if they were actually engaged in this conflict, would have tried to annihilate Starfleet. Instead, They are clearly aware it's fake because they cause no damage and Starfleet causes no damage to them. This is what you do with a child or a dog. If anybody's a dog owner out there and you wrestle with your dog, you pretend to let it beat you or anything like that to make it feel strong or powerful. Some people do the same thing with kids. It's really talking down to the Klingons and patting them on the head. It's like, you're so strong. Yes, you're the strongest little boy on the playground. If I were the Klingons, I would be insulted far more than by the offer of charity. And somehow this resolves everything and satisfies the Warriors' code. The honor of the Klingons has been fulfilled by this dance. It's insulting to the audience. It's asinine from the writers. And it's just further proof that the Klingons need to go away from their honorific roots and go towards the pacifist ways of Jaden. That's the moral of the episode. Be more like Jaden. Everyone should be more like Jaden. Caleb needs to be more like Jaden, a little bit more emotional. The Klingons need to open up to peace as a solution, a little bit more like Jaden. Starfleet realizes that they can't force anyone to do anything like Jaden, and everything with Jaden is a metaphor for homosexuality. So read into that what you will. Fortunately, that is where the episode ends. There are just a couple real quick fire things that are isolated in their moments that I want to briefly talk about. There's an awful joke that Caleb tells to Genesis and Jaden at one point in the episode. They're talking about how, for some reason, Caleb is the best debater, and he's like, actually, I'm a master debater. Yes, we needed a masturbation joke in a Starfleet Academy show. It's absolutely what Star Trek fans have been dying for all of this time. And of course, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, Aki is putting her students, her first-year students with, a couple months of training in danger by flying the Athena away from Earth to study this nebula that they start out the episode at. These are untrained cadets. You shouldn't be putting them in danger. As episode 1 clearly highlights, space is dangerous, especially after the burn where the entire galaxy is fragmented. The Federation is limping along. There are pirates everywhere. No one can be trusted. They're trying to put together a shattered galaxy. This is not a safe environment for cadets. They need to be trained up. Or if you're going to put them in these dangerous situations, have them intern on actual Starfleet vessels amongst well-trained individuals. Having the Athena fly out is immoral, again highlighting the moral corruption of Chancellor Aki. And last but not least, many of you know that I struggle with coincidences. I hate coincidences unless they're an inciting incident. They're really not justifiable, and I see it as lazy writing. A small, minor, just stupid coincidence that doesn't change the plot much that bothered me significantly. One of the flashbacks with Jaden and his very understanding brother. His brother steals him a Starfleet beacon that he gives to Jaden. As soon as Jaden turns it on, it's immediately an ad for Starfleet Academy. Of course, there's no other reason why a beacon would be transmitting anything but plot relevancy. Well, what do you mean? There are communications that aren't plot relevant? I've never heard of such a thing. That bothered me. Probably won't bother anybody else, but I had to highlight it nonetheless. And a continuation of that, which I haven't mentioned thus far, Jaden's older brother, who's the warrior type, goes out and tries to get Jaden more Starfleet technology so that he can connect with this other culture that they virtually know nothing about. And in doing so, the older brother gets stabbed with a poison blade and dies. The older brother dies because he tries to find Starfleet knickknacks for his brother, because his brother wants to be peaceable like the alien society that they have no connection to. Jaden acknowledges the death of his brother, but in the rest of the flashbacks and in the moments in Starfleet Academy, he really doesn't mourn for him. He doesn't take any responsibility. He doesn't feel any guilt for his brother's death. That's some narrative meat that you could dive into and make a real story around. But the writers let that potential drift by. I doubt they even saw it. They didn't realize that they had opened up prime opportunity for good storytelling. Instead, they chose unsubtle metaphors and preachiness, because that's all that they're capable of. Once again, they proved how little talent they have in the Starfleet Academy writer's room. But anyway, that's all that I have for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. The more support this channel gets, the closer we are to publishing the endless frontier novels, alternate sci-fi, for the fans of things like Star Trek who want something of quality. Until then, have a stellar day and stay curious.
There isn't time for an alternative.
Venturing out into the unknown doesn't have to be frightening.
To push the boundaries of the known with the never conceived of.
Today the world will remember who we are and never forget it.